Sorry. I'm gonna make this one quick. Pretty much I got this whole sheet of coordinates. As you all know, this is a Chinese lathe with a equally Chinese chuck. This is the 3-jaw scroll, and where they had this marked, they didn't even have the jaws marked on this, but where they had this marked at the 0, 0, they got their little stamp 0, and they got one, that's right, and right there if you can see it. Anyway, and this is really rough, so my indicator jumps around quite a bit, but oh dang, how am I going to do this? Oh, that's going to cause hell. Anyway, this lathe backplate, besides having a extremely rough finish, has about a thousandths and a half lope in it. Now this little list of coordinates, besides making sure that this was all cleaned up and this was all cleaned up, let me back this off for a second. You'll see that I have, oh that's right, I used this 0 here, and then I actually have markings on here for where they lined up corresponding to the holes. If I didn't line the zeros up together, if I rotated the chuck and screwed it in at different positions. And I actually found that my 0, 1 position, which is what I marked on here, you can mark this any way you want just to keep track of it, but my 0, 1 position is actually the most accurate. Well, first I have to say, go through your jaws, make sure everything's cleaned up. I used this reamer here, it's a nice fat one, and I just ran a 2-inch mark on it. As you can see, there's 2 lines on there. So I put my lines 2 inches apart, and you can do it longer. I figure 2 inches is a nice short distance. It gives me a good idea of how far I'm out in 2 inches, and I can go from there. And so I just magic marker numbered my jaws until I figured out where they fit best. And you know, so I did this. I did at least 3 tests with the reamer on each jaw set. You know, one right at the chuck, and then one 2 inches out. And the reason I do 3, I do 1 and then I rotate the reamer and rechuck it, so that way I can get an average of how, you know, a piece of metal is going to be chucked at just the odd. You know, you're not going to indicate every piece of metal you put in there, so it just gives me a rough idea of statistics, I guess is what you'd say, on how it's going to chuck up for accuracy. So I did that, switching my jaws around, and I found the one where my jaws work best. So I'll go with that jaw set, and I marked it. These jaws are hardened, so I actually had to use a little Dremel engraver for the actual jaw part. The other parts I just, let's see if you can find one. I like right here. If I get it in the right light, maybe. I got a couple of little dots right there, and then I got a couple of dots on the jaw, just so I'll know for future if I take it apart. And then I'll do the same, you know, screw this factory 0. I'll do the same with where I mount this to the faceplate when I'm done. But I mean, without grinding that faceplate, and just by moving the jaws around, my best readings were somewhere in here. Anyway, my best readings were actually pretty good. I think it was this one here, but then once I started rotating the rear end around, you know, I found my best readings with the jaws, and then once I started rotating the faceplate around on the back, this was my best one without ever actually having to grind. You know, I was getting a .025 TIR at the chuck for my first test, and then 2 inches out it was actually only a thousandth. My second test a .275 and 2/1000ths out, and then my third test was actually a .0125 on both in and out. So you can't really complain with that. That could be caused by my lopsided backing plate. So I'm gonna actually take a bit here in a minute and just smooth that out and then try again. I'm going to go with my numbers that I found best after I smooth that out, and you know, just make sure everything's clean. And the other thing is, when you put that backing plate on, when you rotate it around, make sure you torque these just like you're doing a tire, you know, but there's not really a star pattern you can do. So what I do is I put it down and I snug them up, you know, just barely finger tight, I guess is what you'd call it, without actually putting any leverage on it. And then go around and put about a 1/16 of a turn on each one until they don't turn anymore, and that'll give you a good solid mount to the best it can. The other thing I've heard before that you can do with these is, if you can get down to, you know, 2/1000ths of an inch, you can actually put the screws in here to where you're reading that good real lightly, and then, you know, chuck it up and put an indicator on it, and you can rotate it and just tap it with a rubber mallet, and sometimes you can get them to you know, extreme tolerances just by doing that. Keep in mind that depending on what chuck you have and how well that scroll gear is cut, it's going to change with every different dimension of or diameter of stock you put in there. So keep that in mind. I used this reamer, which is a 41/64, and you know, my average stock is going to be about that size, maybe a little bit bigger. So you know, 3/4 inch, somewhere in there. So that was a pretty good choice for giving me some rough estimates. And then once you do all that, if you're still way out of whack, go ahead and grind it, but I wouldn't suggest grinding your jaws until you've done that. So I'm gonna finish playing around with this setup. Hopefully this will help some of you guys get that in a little bit better tolerances. And then if that doesn't work, I guess I'm gonna rig up myself a grinder. So maybe I'll make a video about that, but hopefully this helps somebody out there. Try to get this video posted tonight. I suppose that's about all I gotta say. I don't think I'm forgetting anything. Oh yeah, make sure you get this good and clean when you mount it. Make sure everything's clean. I actually blew everything off with the air hose. I don't usually do that. I usually just take a toothbrush, and I'll go, you know, say you're going in here, instead of just sweeping it around like this, I actually push it so where I'm going like this, so all the crap is getting in front of it and getting pushed into the bristles, as opposed to doing one of these where it just kind of flicks stuff. And then I'll take it out every, you know, little bit and knock it off or wipe it off, and then do it again and do it again. I'll do that 3 or 4 times just to make sure everything's good and clean, because if you have a chip back here, or a chip in your threads, you're just going to give yourself headaches. So cleanliness is next to perfection in some parts of milling. Yeah, that's all for now. I'm going to go see if my oven's preheated and get some dinner. You guys have a good night.